You're watching Star Wars Day with Pops.
Burger Chef introduces Star Wars Fun Meals for your kids. A hamburger, french fries, and Coca-Cola. Imagine how much fun your kids will have. Star Wars Fun Meals. Collect all 7. Only at Burger Chef.
Midnight. Time for a complete breakfast with my Count Chocula.
You can't count.
It's time for my strawberry-flavored Frankenberry.
Cuckoo.
Star Wars stickers! They're here! Wow, I've got the spaceship.
A collection of Star Wars stickers. One in specially marked boxes of these monster cereals.
Star Wars stickers!
Star Wars. It's great in the arcade. Whoa! TIE fighters! Fireballs! Coming right at me! Watch the laser towers. Aim for the tops. Pick on the cutouts. Use the force. It's coming too fast! It's Ray! It's Ray! My shields are gone! All right! I'm going in!
Oh, some game, huh?
Some game!
In a galaxy of video games, there is only one Star Wars.
Oh, wow. It was in 1977, living in Omaha, Nebraska. My father is transitioning out of the Air Force to civilian life, and so I didn't see him much. So one night he comes home and says, I've been doing really good in school, and if he gets released early the next day, he has something special planned. So I'm anticipating all day long. The bell rings. I am the first kid out the door. And there's my dad, and we're in the car, we're driving around, and I'm like, where are we going? Where are we going? Where are we going? And my dad's like, it's okay. Just calm down. And I'm 6 years old at this time. So we pull in like this big commerce center, and there's a marquee, and it says Star Wars. And this little 6-year-old is just like, whoa. So we get a little popcorn, a little something to drink, and we go sit down. And this is back in the day when there was an actual curtain. So when the movie's ready to start, a big curtain comes up. And a long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, first note hits, and this kid's jaw is on the floor for the next 2 hours. And I will never forget that day, because May 25th is also my mom's birthday, and she's a little salty about that day because my dad took me to the movies instead of spending time with her.
The comic books and comic art is a really strong and very close to the pulse of the culture kind of art, and it's really a cultural signpost of the times in which it was drawn. And it really tells you what's going on in a country or what the people are feeling at a particular moment.
All right. Welcome to Star Wars Day. Star Wars impacting everything, changes the landscape of all sorts of things culturally, for fans, non-fans. It didn't matter where you were. Star Wars ended up being there, and in some ways radically changed major industries, collectibles, nerd stuff. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. And let me get started right away with the fact that Marvel was saved by Star Wars. Yeah. Now, go back with me. Got to go back to 1975. I know. Before any of this was ever talked about, we have to go back to the beginning. And you have a situation where Lucas sends out his PR folks, led by Charles Lippincott, to meet with Stan Lee. And Marvel is the number one publisher at the time, by far. But costs are high. It's kind of like now, right? It costs more to print, sales are down, books are late, things are a problem, going quite right. And Stan's kind of like, listen, we'll just see how the movie goes and we'll go from there. But fortunately, Lippincott didn't give up. he sets up a meeting with Roy Thomas. Now, Roy Thomas is one of the most famous comic book creators that nobody knows much about, other than like uber nerds. But Roy was like sold pretty quickly, and he explains to us why later. He's the one that kind of brokers the deal. Howard Chaykin does the art, and they're going to do this project. And it's interesting, quoted. This is actually a 2014 interview that I found with New York Times, where he says, "quote The Star Wars people found me, and I was open to the idea. I liked space opera. I'd always enjoyed Planet Comics as a kid." And they explain what Planet Comics is, right? Then you get into a little bit more of the meat and potatoes of the deal. Marvel didn't pay any licensing fees. So Marvel didn't have to shell out any cash. Lucas only wanted the comic out before the movie's release. Quote, George Lucas and his people were just happy to have a comic book out there for advanced publicity, Thomas said. And this is like completely different than how things are done now, right? Usually stuff is done for merch after the fact. Instead, he looked at it as promotion for the film. And this actually was so brilliant, and you believe how cool this actually turned out. So Thomas wrote issue number one. He actually wrote 6 issues. Howard Chaykin does the artwork. And they put it like a hard sell on there. The greatest space fantasy of all, right? And Roy wrote later on, this is called the 75 Years of Marvel encyclopedia type book. And it says the early issues sold well even before the movie's 1977 debut. Afterwards, sales for a time exceeded 1 million copies per issue. That's right. These reprints went bonkers. And I have to be honest, this was such a big deal. That was our Star Wars. We didn't have the merchandising yet. We didn't have all of this stuff. This was something that we could actually get like right now and enjoy Star Wars as kids. This is actually Jim Shooter. Jim Shooter actually was the later chief. He says Marvel was a mess throughout the mid 70s. And during my 2 years as a quote associate editor, from the beginning of 76 through the end of 77, almost every book was late. There was unscheduled reprints and fill-ins, plain missed issues here and there. Many books, despite my best up the bottom, were unreadable. Not merely bad, unreadable. Imagine how poor Jim feels today. Almost all less than they ought to be. Upstairs, the cheesy non-comics magazine department was losing millions. It seemed like the company as a whole was in a death spiral. Can you imagine this is actually what's happening? And they have their initial print run, and it goes completely bonkers, of course, and reprints. And then there's the guy who actually owns all of it. It's actually called Cadence Industries, and they own Marvel at the time. His name is James Galton, and he was quoted as saying he told several people that he should just give his regards because I had made him rich. And this is Roy Thomas speaking. I made him rich. He felt Star Wars at the time was extremely helpful financially. I didn't know Marvel was a problem at the time because I wasn't paying attention to sales after stepping down as editor in chief 2 or 3 years prior. So Roy didn't really know that the company was really having a hard time like it was. I really wasn't aware of how things had eroded, but there were little things like the creeping up in comic book price, cover price. The book out and helped Marvel at a very important time when things were iffy for them. Can you imagine that? Star Wars saving Marvel. Such a cool story. Jim Shooter, this is actually a different article, Gizmodo, and says, uh, basically giving the credit. He willed it, the Star Wars adaptation to happen. Nobody else wanted it. This was before I editor in chief. I hope I would have had the sense into him. Star Wars was a tremendous hit and kept the company alive during a very tough time. Kept the company going. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is another quote. This is the article explaining how he kind of goes through everything, how basically um, it brought in obviously the Conan was another licensed property was part of and that it sold so many more copies than even like Amazing Fantastic Four did. Oh, this was him explain. This is a different interview. This was in explains. Star Wars people didn't even ask for money for the adaptation. I went with it because it was free. Like Roy didn't do it. I mean, yes, he because I like space opera, I like sci-fi stuff, but it was a free gig. Like that was they might have asked for money for the rights when they first approached Marvel and were turned down. But by the time they came to me, money wasn't a big factor. They either wanted the book done on our terms or they were just not going to get the book done. So basically, Marvel was their last effort as well. Over here. So just to recap, Marvel's broke. Marvel's struggling, if nothing else. They don't want to do this, and they get the books out there. So before Comic Con was a thing, so in 1976, there is a photo of these screens that are on like a tripod with like a you pull the screen up and there's like a little hook at the top, and that's actually what Star Wars screened on at Comic Con. And this is an actual image. Are you ready? This is an image of Howard Chaykin and Roy Thomas at San Diego Comic Con with their Star Wars shirts on. They're selling their comic books, they're doing their Q&A, they're talking Star Wars, and I got to be honest, the best part of this was they're dropping all sorts of crazy spoilers. Like they didn't there was no real sense of like what should be hush hush at this point. They were just trying to figure out how this movie they thought this movie I guess they ultimately spent around $9 million. It's probably one of the more accurate numbers for budget. I don't, it's 100% accurate, but that's one of the more accurate numbers I've read on budget. So they were like, we got to drum up enough business that this movie can make money. Little did they know what was going to happen, right? Talked about in this morning's live stream. Like you just lines around the corner. I mean, they made more money than Jaws. I mean, then they didn't know if they were ready to sequel.
All right. So with all that said, let's get right to Star Wars #1. And for all of us that are in this sort of age bracket, this sweet spot of 1977, we all rushed out, tried to find a way to own these comic books because this was our Star Wars. We didn't have action figures yet. The merch hadn't really kind of caught up, and the books were out before the movies. So these were readily available. Now, most people, if you've seen this book, you have seen the book on the left, which is the 30-cent normal version. Now, Marvel was experimenting at the time, and I did earlier talk about the financial problems Marvel was having. They did experiment with a 35-cent version that went out in about 4 markets. Now, notice at the bottom there's a barcode there. So it's very important to understand the books are exactly the same otherwise. The difference is that 35-cent box and the fact that this print run, you can see the barcode, means it's newsstand. Only roughly 1,000 to 1,500 copies went out into the world. So imagine how rare it is to see 35-cent books and see them in good condition. So this is why this book is such a big deal. Now, if we go a little bit further into the story, we start to go, well, wait a minute, like how comparatively, how much of a difference is this? All right, well, so CGC is the name of the primary comic book grading company. They certify a book, they put it in a plastic case that's called a slab, and it's graded. So now there's like it's a third party grading. So now you and I wouldn't be disputing over what that grade is. So within this month, literally a few days ago, a 9.4, so this is a near mint version, better than near mint version of a 30-cent version sold for $695. That's pretty solid. It's not as high as I would have expected it to go for, but that's pretty solid. Now, within a reasonably similar time frame, believe it or not, a 35-cent version sold, actually it was the day before, a CGC 5.0. That's right, a 5. Imagine how far down the scale a 5 is, how many stress marks, how many folds and creases, and yeah, that sold for $4,377. That's the difference. Why? Because that one on the right is extremely rare. Extremely rare. You will actually see some price guides that won't put a price in because it's sort of like one of those things it's really hard to gauge what the market is because the market will move in real time. All right. Now, let me give you a couple more variations of this book because this thing got reprinted like crazy. And there's this company, or we're just going to call it, just remember the name Whitman. And Whitman has those little diamond symbols. And the most common thing with Whitman was that they would come in these like poly bagged, multiple issues were in this package, and your mom or whoever would pay the $1 or $2, whatever it was, for several books. There is a version, though, as you can see with the diamond at the top on the right, it has a Whitman that actually had a barcode.
I don't think we know exactly how many of these actually went out because that is actually a mistake. They shouldn't have had a barcode. I don't even know. I read an article once that was talking about someone who claimed that the barcodes wouldn't even scan because they weren't supposed to have a barcode. A normal Whitman would have a plain box or something like that. It would not have a barcode. Either way, that's what a Whitman variant looks like. Then on top of that, again, they sold millions of copies, right? Well, they didn't print a million up front. So what happened is they made reprints. So now you have reprints. Now you can see in the box, everything else is the same 30-cent version, a 35-cent Whitman, whatever, but you'll see the word reprint in that blue text, in that black box, in the Luke Skywalker logo box. These are your different variations. Variant, I mean, the price is significantly less for all of these. But again, the condition is going to matter so much because imagine how many of us were reading and tearing these things up and enjoying them for what they were because they were our Star Wars for years. For years, we didn't let go of those books. And then it kind of takes us to kind of this thought. Imagine what we have witnessed and talked about. Our first look at Star Wars, our first exposure to something that we can have in our hands at home from what we just saw in the theater, we were all wowed by and pretending, came in the form of something like a comic book. And that's why it took off. And Marvel was struggling so much. Again, remember, they didn't pay Lucasfilm any money until it sold 100,000 copies. Can you imagine that deal? 100,000. Most comic books today do not sell 100,000 copies. This book sold million. Save Marvel. Roy Thomas, we thank you. All right, so let's get to trading cards. So, yes, something else that radically changed because of Star Wars was trading cards. They were there. So, yes, before we got these Topps cards, there was Wonder Bread cards. And you want to talk about a frenzy. I remember we were trying to be super good so we could get the Wonder Bread cards and our lunch from our lunch ladies. We would go to these hostess stores and filter through all these bundles of bread, trying to convince my grandmother to buy this one because I needed the Obi-Wan card or the Vader card or whatever it was. But the Topps card, 15 cents, and you were connected to Star Wars. So, oh my goodness. It's so amazing that during the pandemic, the world changed so dramatically because up until that point, these were, I want to say, reasonably priced. Now, they were not cheap and they're not in cheap and good condition, but you could get open wax, you could get full sets, you could find the different series. So let me go through them really quickly. So the first group that comes out, and they come out early on too, right? So it wasn't like there was a lag time or anything like that. They have a blue border. This is what the wax packs look like. Let me scroll down and show you the card. This is the Luke Skywalker #1 card. Here you go. You have this little starburst in the bottom. Very primitive design, one that I think Topps used on their Star Trek set. Right? Nothing really fancy here. Card #1, Luke Skywalker. This is the most important card because it's on top. So the top card and the bottom card, if it's in a plastic case, would be the ones that get damaged the most. So this is technically, quote, the Luke Skywalker rookie card. And people went bonkers during the pandemic, and nothing else to do. And they realized that if we had PSA 10s, which is the professional grading company for a trading card, PSA 10 meaning a perfect 10, the perfect card, extremely rare. Now, why is that? One, how many of them survive? But even if you open a pack of cards, what you're going to find is the most or common flaw is the centering. Notice the blue edge around it. Then there's like a little black line, then a yellow border, then the photo. That border is almost always offset, either horizontally or vertically. And that matters tremendously. Now, there's other errors, right? Because if it was up against the gum, it could have gum residue on it. It could just have a ding or something else is wrong. You may have a misprint, a complete misprint, which I'll show you here. Let me scroll down and show you one of the. So these would come in with the bubble gum and stickers. Here's the back. They had story summaries. They had so much information about characters and different things that are going on. It was consuming. And by the way, notice the spelling of lightsabers is two words, and it's BORS.
RES. So yes, that's something that happened. So here's one of the stickers. This is a Vader sticker, and the stickers as you go along, what you would find is the biggest problem with the stickers again, the centering, but also the cuts on the top and the bottom on the stickers really are very commonly incorrect. They're off centered. So if there's a color change, something like that, that dramatically affects everything. So the first series was blue cards, and then there was I'm gonna make sure I got this right. I got my notes pulled up here. So blue cards came first, then red, then yellow, green, and orange. There were 5 sets of 66 cards, 11 stickers. Holy cow. Sometimes trading cards would have a series two. Obviously, this broke the mold with demand. So hence the reason there are 5 sets for 1977 Star Wars. And obviously the blue set's the highest price, the most in demand because they're the first ones. But there is also an extremely expensive, extremely rare. Let me go ahead and change my sharing over here to a different screen so I can show you the notorious error card. So this is the C3PO green card. It's a series 4 card. Okay. Seems innocent enough, or at least that's what you'd kind of like you might think. But for whatever reason, for whatever there I'll read the article on this, but I'm just going to scroll up so you can see this is card 207. It's green. It is considered the obscene variant card. There you have it. Story goes, um, let's see. It has to do with the set and the filming. It has to do with the actual costuming allegedly came undone, and that's what we're seeing. Is that it sort of we're seeing the costuming. The it's the paneling around his waist, but when you look at the other card, the paneling is still there. So I don't know if it's because it wraps around and it came out like that. That's what they're trying to say. So let's just say there are an error card that's out there as well. So some of these cards have fascinating lore, fascinating history, and bizarre trading elements that I don't know what to tell you guys. We love them because we obviously were so immersed in it, and then it also would have on the back like a setup or a tease for the next card, so you always knew what you were looking for, right? Now, I don't have any Series 1 cards here. The Series 1 cards that I actually owned have all been sort of bequeathed to one of my sons. I don't actually have any Series 1 cards. I look to get a pack for us to do, and they're just way outside the price point to do for the old Pops channel. But I do have some cards to show you. And then we're going to, I know, get you ready on your keyboards. We're going to give away some cards. Okay. So obviously, the cards continue, right? We get to Empire Strikes Back. There's a series 1, there's a series 2, the first Boba Fett card, the first Lando card, that kind of thing. So here's an example of what I'm trying to show you. This is a Boba Fett card. The famous Boba Fett's got his gear, he's got his Han and Carbonite. And then on the back, you have information that's kind of fun, little trivia, things like that. And you have the tease for the next card in the set. Okay. Now, let me show you another one, and this one's even more illustrated. So this is Vader and the different bounty hunters. Now notice how thin this edge is compared to this edge and how skinny that top is, right? Here, look, compare it to this one. See how different the width is at the top? So that's how sensitive these are in their condition as far as grading goes. Because to be honest, the centering is a bigger issue than the corners. The centering, we could open a wax pack and get a nice card. You can have someone like me who's had cards in sleeves and cases this whole time. So the corners are not the issue. No, it's the centering is the issue, right? So, okay. Here's the thing. Right now on your keyboard, if you type in the number 42 The first 7 people who put in 42, you'll get one of these cards. They're all different. I have them numbered. So the first person will get the one that I put number 1 on, then number 2, number 3. So the first 7 people who put in number 42, you will get a one of these cards. So let me show you which ones you're playing for. I'm going to mix them up so there's no sort of like shenanigans of who's getting which card. I don't want you to know. Be a surprise, right? All right. So this is one of the one we saw. Okay. And let's do the other one because I think I have another one that's like that, right? Yeah, there's the other one. Yeah. And then I have one more Empire card. This is actually a different series. This is a Han Solo card. And none of these are perfect. Please, they're free to a good home, right? Because don't go off trying to grade these. These are not that great, but they're nice. They're not dinged up or anything like that. Great Boba Fett card from Return of the Jedi. The rest of these are Jedi cards. Han with Leia on the side, and then Boba looking on in Jabba's palace. Oh, and then another one. All right, because I grabbed 2. I guess I grabbed 2 of those, so 2 people can win those. So there you go, folks. Free contest for those of you that are watching. I will make a note of that too. If I'm not in chat right now, I will be catching this so I can figure out who are the 7 winners and get you your cards. So thanks for watching this part. And I'm going to actually do a commercial so I can reset and we're going to talk about something else. Be right back.
Here's the new Star Wars Death Star space station that you put together. Action figures each sold separately.
Darth Vader's firing a laser cannon. It's been hit. He's after Luke. Take the elevator. Hurry! Now cross the light bridge. You won't escape me. Jump, Luke. Oh, no. The trash compactor. There's a trash monster. The wall's closing. Save!
Kenner's new Star Wars Death Star space station. Action figures each sold separately.
Okay, so look, to be honest, due to time constraints, I couldn't get into like all the stuff that I really wanted to get into today and really get into other areas of how Star Wars just exploded and really try to communicate to you, especially if you didn't live through it, how crazy this got. And I know it's not really that shocking. I don't really have much for when the first movie dropped, but I do have this. I wanted to show you. This is from Empire. Star Wars is on Time magazine. This is for Empire. Came with a trading card. Long story. So yeah, I didn't buy it. This hasn't been around. I bought this second, and actually, it's really nice. It has some stress marks on it, and someone tore the label off. But other than that, it's actually in really good shape. But it went into every aspect of life and culture. And I will probably show these off other times during the day. So if you're going to see that again later, that will be why. So I'm kind of a collector of some of these magazines because a lot of them I was able to get inexpensive over the years. This one actually is from the original series. This is actually Mad Magazine. Mad Magazine. That's right. There he is. Alfred E. Newman and the Vader. Look at the caricature of the cast. Leia's the only one who's really, really kind of off. Yeah, I thought that was really great. And it's funny too because at some point or another I picked up. I don't want to take them out. They're in the back, so these are actually they're actually stamps for the post office. There's a whole set of stamps here, so I have all those too. Those came out later after the prequels. So there are tons of things that you could do. I think I'm at the point now where I may just try to look and see how much maybe magazine holders would be. I still don't think that they're garnering a lot of money. They're just not. People are not interested in. There's not like a demand. So again, everything is supply and demand, right? Because this is in really good condition. It's not like it's. I'm not going to say it's gradable. I'm not going to say compare it to like comic book standards or anything like that, but it's in very good condition. So putting it in like a magazine case or something like that would be kind of nice. It could go into the rotation with some of the comics and things like that. But I'd love to, I'm going to try to monitor chat for each one of these premieres so that I can kind of see some of your comments and thoughts, different things that you've seen that you wanted to talk about, or we can elaborate on. Definitely weren't during one of the actual live streams. And again, I don't want to open it. This is actually an Empire one, but this is actually a poster book. So what they do is like it's like a magazine, but it's basically just a bunch of little mini posters and pictures and things like that. So what do you think ended up all over our rooms with stuff like this? This is where it came from. So yeah, these were really, really popular when I was young. Um, Again, this is Jedi, another Time magazine I got with George on the cover. Right. So that was out there with the person's address. This came from Portland, Oregon. All right, I think. And then this one, I really, really always thrilled that I was able to get one of these inexpensive. This was our bread and butter back then. This was Starlog. Huge deal to get Starlogs. That was our information gateway, was to try to catch Starlogs and stuff like that. All mine were just like torn up. I had covers off of them, the whole nine. So, but I got this one, able to get this in secondary market. And then I have no idea how I was able to get my hands on this because I did not know when I got it what it was. And basically it's the comic book summary book. They so the original movie, it's rather large. It's bigger than a magazine, the big one. And I have that too. Those don't hold value for some reason either. I actually saw one. I already have one, and this one was like $10 or $15. I actually almost bought it, but I don't know. We were doing something else. I wouldn't want to travel with it. But this is the equivalent in Empire Strikes Back. And this actually hit markets before the other comics did. So this is actually the first appearance of like Yoda and stuff. Like this is actually worth a fair amount of money. I didn't even know. Look at how bad it's like. It's not in good condition or anything like that. Look at this, a big fold right here. It's got stuff like that. But this is so cool. Like I was like, oh, I didn't even know I had this. I didn't even know I had this. Yeah. So yeah, this will be something that I'm going to spend some time looking at a little bit, figuring out what I'm going to do with, if anything. But I'd love to know, like, when we were going through this process, that especially that first few years, 77 and up until Empire, anything with Star Wars. Every time you went in a store, you were trying to seek out action figures. You were fishing through them, looking for a different one, looking for another stormtrooper, maybe a different version, another Jawa, maybe things like that. And then went to Empire. You already had a feel for what and how things were going to go, and the mania had definitely leveled up. But we ended up having cooler stuff each time. Each time things got cooler and cooler and cooler. Playsets got cooler, more complicated details, different figures, different variations, things like that. So I hope you're enjoying like the process of like reliving some of this, going through the motions of how that's going to work. Throughout the day, I am going to, I just want to run through that list with you guys really quick of kind of like how the day is going to shape up from here. Again, you can go over to the playlist down below. Everything is in the playlist. So, because if you missed it, I started at 6 a.m. this morning with the folks over in Japan. So, Ginger Ninja, Angry Canadian, and of course, Gray, Wakasashi Tea House. We go through a live stream. We talked about all that. And then after this, so at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're watching this in the premiere, I'm actually live over on Stone Loki's channel right now for Thirsty Thursday. But after this will be the premiere of the holiday special. We're going to do a tribute with the holiday special. I have Troy Pacelli on with me. He does an actual rewatch of that every year. So mark your November calendars. Check out Troy's channel. It's fantastic. And he has an amazing fan created commercial that will be included in that video stream, that premiere. Then if you happen to be coming back around at 11 o'clock Eastern time, all my times are Eastern time, I'll be on with ETAP. He considers Empire Strikes Back not just his favorite Star Wars movies, his favorite movie of all time. So we're going to talk with him, and he has some cool stuff in his office. I'm hoping that we get a little bit of time to look around in the office and see some of his stuff. Then I have a comic book review of Star Wars number 81, which is basically what happened to Boba Fett after Return of the Jedi. What happens to Boba Fett after he goes in the Sarlacc pit, and issue number 81 was part of that. We continue that theme
About 12:15, that's when I'm almost Stone Loki. We have one called Exploring the EU, and we kind of go through the expanded universe, extended universe, all the different novels and comic books and things that he really enjoyed and liked, and some of his recommendations. Then we shift gears around 1 o'clock and do a quick Clone Wars reaction and conversation with Joker Voice. And it's just a tremendous conversation. I love talking with him about all that. It's very passionate, such great stuff. A live stream, you want to come on and hang out with me today, that first opportunity will land at 1:30 p.m. till about 4. So I'll be on around there, and the mic will be open. I have at least one guest that's told me they're going to try to make it, so I know there's going to be at least one. Probably a couple others can come in near the end there, but around 4 o'clock, though, I got to kind of take a little bit of a break, make sure I'm eating and taking care of myself. We'll have a little video sequence here. We're going to do first. It's Brandon, the anime guy, will be on with me about TIE Fighter anime. Then Padawannabe does a like an hour long show and tell with some prequel toys. And then I have Jace Fox talking about the prequels. He loving the prequels, being a prequel baby, and then doing fan edits and stuff like that. So that's great. That'll take us to the rest of the late afternoon into the early evening at 6 o'clock. Return of the Jedi, our tribute 40 years later, Return of the Jedi. Great panel of guests. Going to be all of ActTube will be here. Daryl and Jester's Darth Arlena, as well as Arwen Avalon and Magitech Mags. So Mags, who was on with me last year, celebrating the 25th, she comes back. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, right after that stream, about 7:30, we'll have a very tight ending there for Return of the Jedi. We'll open it right back up again with another live stream. I don't have a really set end time, but I figure probably around 9:30 my time. A Comment Idiot's going to be on with me as kind of like an unofficial co-host, and we'll kind of let the open mic kind of drive the conversation about some different stuff, memories, collectibles, whatever you want to talk about. So that's kind of the plan. And I hope you're having a good Star Wars day. I'd love to hear about some of the stuff that you guys want to talk about. Hopefully you can jump on with me. We can share some time, share some memories. We can dive more into some of this other stuff that I have here kind of set aside. Or if you want to see something I've already shown, you can ask for it, and we'll definitely do that as well. So I hope you're having a great time. Thank you so much. And here's some more commercials and some fun stuff to take you back to what it was like living through this. Just having a great time, just celebrating an IP that we cherish and love. So thank you again. I'm Pops.
Now, it's here. The excitement, the adventure of a new force at breakfast.
We'll call them C-3POs.
New C-3PO cereal from Kellogg's. Twin rings, phased together. For 2 crunches in every double O. A delicious part of this nutritious breakfast. Now you can experience the taste of Kellogg's C-3POs. A crunchy new force at breakfast.
May the Force be with you.
Oh, boy! I've reached Millennium Falcon. The Force is with you.
You too can play the space fantasy Star Wars game, Escape from Death Star. Be the first to help Luke and Leia, Han Solo, and Chewbacca escape from the garbage dump and reach the safe Rebel base. The Force can also be against you.
Back to the trash compactor.
You spin to get past TIE fighters.
I win! All right!
Escape from Death Star. It comes complete with everything you see here. New from Kenner, from the Star Wars collection.
I'm Darth Vader. I'll beat you to the finish. I've got Luke, R2-D2, Chewbacca, and all the good guys. I've got the Force. I've got the Force.
It's the blazing power of the new Star Wars SSP van set with features like headers, mag wheels, custom grills, and space-age graphics.
Yeah! The good guys finish first. Till next time.
The Star Wars SSP van set by Kenner comes with everything here. Each